So it's 6 o'clock and I'm going to call the study session of January 23rd of 2023 in session. We have all council members here except for Ms. Newman. And she did call in. Can I have a motion to excuse her?
I think you have to give me permission.
Well, they hadn't been doing it that way, huh?
I'd like to make a motion to excuse Councilmember Newman tonight.
Yes, do I have a second?
I second it.
So it's been moved and seconded to excuse Charlotte Newman from the meeting tonight. So now we can go on with our other business. Our first item on regular business is the 2023 refuse and recycle rate increase. And I'll turn that over to Mr. Steffens.
Good evening. The City of Sumner's contract with Murray's Disposal allows for an annual rate increase. This rate increase is based off two different components. The first component is 80% of the local inflation rate, and then the second is a pass-through of the increased tipping fees that the county charges up at the landfill. The council and public have been provided with an Exhibit A, which shows the new rates proposed would go into effect March 1st. On average, we're looking at somewhere here, it's roughly 8% is the overall increase between the two price components. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yes, do we have any questions from any of the council members? It's Mr. Reed.
Thank you. I just had a question. I totally understand that the costs are increasing for Murray's, whether it be the inflation or the dump fees. And sorry, my screen is still doing the same thing it did last week. But my question is, we've been back pretty regular for steady increases. Do we know how we're tracking in compared to other districts in the area?
As far as our rates compared to other cities, is that your question?
Yes.
I know that the largest component of these garbage rates is, of course, the tipping fees. So that's a cost that they're going to pass on to all of their Pierce County customers. I know I'm a county resident and my rates are slightly higher than what citizens in Sumner pay, but I do believe that our rates are pretty comparable.
Okay, I was just curious because I'm not familiar with rates are in other districts or other cities. So I just know that we seem to be coming back for $2 to $3 about every 6 months, it seems like.
Yeah, these rates are included in the contract and they're an annual increase. They go into effect every March of every year.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Looks like there's none, so we'll complete that subject. So
Deputy Mayor and Council, this is going to be on the next regular council meeting, correct, Jeff?
That's correct.
For consideration, and then it would go into effect March 1st.
And the public has been provided with notice that's been posted on the website as well as in the paper, according to law.
But it does not come on their bill. The notice that there's going to be a rise.
I don't believe so.
All right, thank you. So we'll move on to the second item in its compost procurement policy. Mr. Wilson, will you explain that?
Yes, Deputy Mayor, let me just get my screen share going here. Okay. All right, before you tonight is a proposed ordinance to adopt a compost procurement policy. Last year, the state legislature passed a bill that would establish a requirement for food waste to be diverted from the waste stream and then turned into organic compost. Also part of this bill, it requires cities that are either A, over 25,000 or B, have yard waste services to adopt a procurement policy to encourage the use of this compost material in city or other municipal projects. What you're on the screen right now is kind of the timeline for how all of this is going to be implemented. And we are in that very first step of adopting the compost procurement policy. Technically, we're supposed to have this adopted by January 1st of this year. However, due to some confusion, we didn't think we were going to have to apply to it until they verified that yard waste is qualifies as a requirement. So we are a little bit late in getting this adopted. Department of Ecology is okay with that. And then the next steps are all really going to be dealt with in our businesses. So particularly those that are restaurants and grocery stores, they're going to be forced to divert organic materials from their waste stream. So it's not going to the landfill, it's going into composting facilities. So what does the law require? It requires us to adopt the ordinance that says that we shall plan for the use of compost in these following categories. That's landscape projects, construction and post-construction soil amendments, erosion control, and low impact development to filter pollutants out of water. It also requires us to plan for the use of this in our projects with the following exceptions. So we don't have to use compost if they are not available within a reasonable period of time. The products that are available do not comply with the existing purchasing standards. They're not available or don't comply with federal or state quality and health standards, or the purchase price is not reasonable or competitive. The law also requires that every 2 years that we report to the Department of Ecology the total tons of organic material diverted throughout the year. Obviously, we don't collect our own organic material, right? We're not a hauler like Murray's Disposal is. So we will get that information from them. But we do have to track the volume and cost of compost purchased throughout the year for our projects, and then the source or the sources of that. So where did we purchase it from? Going back to that reporting, that is something that is an unfunded mandate. We're working internally to develop processes on how to best track that, and including how we even bid projects, because we're going to need to do that cost evaluation of whether it's cost prohibitive or not to use this type of material. It included in your packet was the draft ordinance, and it will be before you for consideration on February 6th. And then in the future, I think as we go through, the alley activation is a good example. As we go through these processes, we're going to need to keep this in mind that while businesses today, especially in our downtown core, may only have garbage and recycling, in the not too distant future, they're also going to have some sort of organic material collection, right? So planning future-wise on how big we make maybe shared garbage receptacles or other code provisions that we put in place to make sure that they're dumped on a regular basis, because we don't want food scraps sitting out for long periods of time. So that's just something that we're going to have to keep on our radar in the future as our these businesses within the city are having to divert this material in a different way. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, Ms. Potato.
Is there any plan for households to do composting and have it part of the program? Because I think that's one thing that I know that Councilmember Cole mentioned that is, something we should consider.
Yes, I'm actually really glad you brought that up, because I failed to mention that. In the very near future, you're going to see some change from Murray's that is going to re-educate our communities on what can go into your yard waste bin. And what I've been told from Murray's, if you can eat it, it can go in your bin. So it's not going to be as robust as King County. If you're familiar with King County, you can put pizza boxes, you can put bamboo silverware and plates and stuff that are made out of bamboo in there. They're not going to get that to that point, at least initially in Pierce County, but they are going to expand. So instead of just vegetable and fruit scraps, it'll be other types of edible food will be able to go in there.
That would go in the yard waste.
It'll go in your yard waste.
Okay, I'm going to ask my question next. So now why would it go in the yard waste? I thought this was going to be separated and made into compost. Can yard waste? I mean, you can put, they put bigger sticks and all those kinds of things in there.
Yeah, the yard waste and food waste all are blended together to make the compost. The large part of this legislation really focuses on restaurants and grocery stores to make sure that that type of material is not going into the landfill, but they would be collected either in a yard waste container or future different type of container to go to the same place that your yard waste goes to be made into compost.
So a lot of the responsibility is going to fall on Murray's because they will have to have, I'd say, tight fitting containers and that sort of thing for this as compares to just loose and open and available.
Yeah, talking to Murray's, talking to Josh, and I wish he was here tonight to help answer this, but he's talking about new infrastructure for Murray's, which would be, possibly different carts, different trucks of that nature to help pick this up from restaurants and grocery stores. But for the standard residential customer, it'll be part of your yard waste service.
Okay, Mr. Stewart, do you have a question?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Oh, good, thank you. Jason, you took the words right out of my mouth that this is a unfunded mandate. And first of all, I think that's what the state is known for, is unfunded mandates. And it's unfortunate that we get saddled with a lot of these expenses that may not be that beneficial for us, but let's hope it is. Secondly, for all of you that haven't ever been there, you should take a tour of some of the local composting processes. It's wonderful to see how they can grind up things. That's why they have limits on the size of tree branches that you can throw in the up in the yard waste thing up on the hill. It's just terrific to see how they put stuff through grinders and they make beauty bark out of it or fertilizer, whatever. So I think that's really good. My other comment, and it's kind of a question, is almost all new houses and probably a lot of the older homes in Sumner have garbage disposals. And I know that I don't put food scraps down they go in the garbage to keep my pipes clean. But if they're just small, they go through the garbage disposal. So how can we educate people better to be more conscious of where they put their food scraps once this program gets up and running?
So there's going to be a fair amount of education. In fact, I didn't even put a slide in here, but we are going to be required to help educate the public. So I imagine that'll be done through a joint effort with Murray's. I know we'll use our social media and newsletters to help get that out, but I think Murray's has a big hill to climb here when it comes to public education in this. But they're required to under the law.
Thank you.
Ms. Cole, you have a question?
Just a comment. I'm so excited to hear this. I did meet with the Murrays last January and had no hopes whatsoever that this would happen. I know it's not today, but just that it's going to happen. And there were, and when I had that meeting, I was told that there were a few, types of food or fruit that you could actually put into, and veggies that you could actually put into the yard waste bin. And but I'm excited to hear that it will be further developed and there'll be an option to include more types of foods. Thanks.
And I'll just clarify, once again, if anybody's listening at home or watching at home, if it's a fruit or vegetable, like potato, peels, whatever, it can go in your yard waste today with no problem.
So thank you, Mr. Wilson. Oh, Mr. Brown, you have a question?
Yes. Who is responsible for the containers at restaurants?
I don't know 100% because they're still trying to, I think, figure all that out. But my guess is that, like today, if it's a garbage container at a restaurant or recycling container, it's supplied by Murray's. They rent it essentially. Imagine it'll be the same type of setup for organic materials.
So maybe Murray's.
Yeah, I would assume Murray's will be.
How is it going to be monitored? Or is it the honor system?
I think it's going to be largely the honor system. I don't see us being the garbage police, for lack of a better term. But we'll see how much voluntary compliance is, and that's why we have to report this to Ecology every 2 years, and we'll see what changes in the law in the future based on those reports.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so no other questions on this subject? So Jason, when will we be voting on this or
February
this-
6th.
February 6th? Okay, thank you. Mr. Brown?
Can we vote no? Who's mandated?
That's a great question, Mr. Brown. You can vote no, and if the whole council voted no, if it failed, this is a state law, so we are required to adopt a compost policy. So we'd be coming back to council saying, would you rather see, or what would you like to change in it? And whether or not we could change it depends on your requests. It's really an unfunded mandate.
Okay, I think we're ready to move on to the next subject, and that's Rainier View Park Covered Court. And we'll have Mr. Barry come forward to explain that.
Good evening, council. Derek Berry, Community Services Manager. Today before you, we have the Rainier View Park Covered Court funding discussion. Some background on this: in 2018, we did our Parks Trail Plan update. This project moved forward at that point. We went for RCO funding that year. We're not selected, came back to council. It was still a priority, so we went to get grants in 2020. We were selected by RCO and LCP. That's the Recreation Conservation Office, and then the state legislature's local community project grant. Since then, we've been working with a consultant, Final Design, and we just got our engineer's estimate back. So I'm here with some discussion and bad news. Not necessarily bad news, opportunities. How about that? So there's a summary of what I just gave you. The original budget was done in 2018. It was $975,000. To date, we have spent $95,000 with another almost $40,000 encumbered. This is for the design work. The new engineer's estimate has it up to 1.721. That does include a lot of the work for the Portland Loo that's going to be out there, which was not a part of the original grant or part of the initial design, as well as some ADA parking upgrades. It does include the 32% in contingencies, does not include construction management. I'm sorry, it does now, because I did add it into that figure, roughly 150 to 200,000. And then the final design portion still isn't done. So in looking at the estimate, we took a look at what things could be considered to maybe go away. One thing that came to mind is skylights. As you can see in the building here, it's open air on the side. The skylights are really just let additional lighting in during the day. And then the windscreens towards the top as though, even though they're nice, they're not structural for the building. So another one, quite expensive, 204,000 there. Like I mentioned before, we did have 36,000 for the Portland Loo improvements. That doesn't include the Portland Loo itself. It's just part of the bid contract work that would go out, as well as 61,000 in ADA upgrades. One thing we did add to get to that total was 59,400 to have a metal seam roof. Instead of a 20-25 year with a membrane roof, you get 30 to 50 years. So it's a good investment in our opinion. So the nuts and bolts of it comes down to additional funding to make these things happen. We wanted to keep the windscreen and we want to keep the skylights. You're looking at moving the YMCA property proceeds, which was originally slated to go towards Rainier View Parks playground equipment. But we do have our playground reserve fund that could do the replacement itself. So it's reallocating that money towards this project, increasing our parking fee by 200,000, real estate excise tax 250,000, and council strategic reserve of 100,000. That gets you to the 800,000 roughly that would be needed. As you can see on the far right column, those are the available balances right now. YMCA proceeds is just a one-time thing that we're getting, so we'd be wiping that clear. Like I said, just reallocating it. Current balance for parking back fees is 856,000, just over $1 million for real estate excise tax, 754 for council strategic reserve. I left ARPA off of there, as well as general fund balance. And then if we did the value engineered version, where you take out the windscreen, you take out the skylights, it reduces the allocation from each of those 4 funds. And I do want to explain more about the grant cost increase with little asterisks down below. Through RCO, there's the possibility from the director of RCO that we could get up to 10% of the project cost as a cost overrun type thing. It's one of the very few programs they have that lets you do that, but there's no guarantee of it. So my suggestion or approach to you, recommendation would be to identify funds if you want to move forward with it. And then if we do get up to that 10% back, we reallocate it back to whatever fund you guys have identified. So some considerations to look at. Full project moves forward. We reduce the scope of the value engineering, or we stop the project altogether and reimburse RCO and LCP. I really hope you don't choose the last one. It's been a great project. So
Can you explain why you should choose the last one? Because again,
yeah, so our ongoing relationship with RCO, same with the state legislature. We go to them with asks all the time, and they've come through and provided funding, and here we are saying, oh, sorry, we aren't moving forward. It doesn't really sit well, probably for future relations with them. And then there's been no improvement out at Rainier View Park since 2007, other than some fruit trees we were able to plant. So it's definitely a very exciting project. The costs have obviously gone up quite a bit. It's been 4 years and steel prices have almost doubled from when we started. So I was expecting some cost increases, but not at this level. So do you have any questions or things you want to talk through?
you can go back to this picture.
Sure, everyone has questions on this one. So Ms. Potato, would you like to ask yours?
Can you talk to me about the Portland Loo and why the cost is so high? I mean, I guess I don't really understand the structure, what they.
So the Portland Loo was added on through ARPA funding.
Mhm.
We have one coming at Loyalty Park really soon. We decided to have the second one here. So 250,000, I believe, was allocated through the ARPA fund in committee. About 150 of it is to purchase the Portland Loo. That's a ballpark figure, about 150. And then you have a lot of utility work. So there's an entire concrete pad that has to be poured. We have to run utilities out to the area at the park where it's going to be. I think it's a 1.5 or 2 inch water line, electrical. Obviously, you're doing your sewer connections. So there's 250 is about the right amount to set aside for it. The figures I showed you tonight were for the design and bid package that would go out to a contractor to do. So I was trying to separate the Portland Loo and the ADA out of it because that's not RCO and LCP funding that we've already talked about. That's not part of the original design work.
So to be clear, the Portland Loo is covered already and it's not part of this discussion. It's just the
Okay.
$36,000 that's tied to the LCP
Yeah.
and RCO funds.
Okay, I just needed more
Yeah.
understanding about what, how they work. Thanks.
Ms. Cole?
And what would be the 10% amount that would need to be covered if LCO, is it
RCO.
RCO would cover that?
So if we can request it from the director of RCO, it's up to 10% of the project cost. So
Of the
we're
project
talking 1 without the ADA and Portland Loop, we're talking probably 1.5 somewhere in there. So 150,000 more potentially. So it's a substantial amount, but I know we're not the only city in this position where costs have gone above what you were expecting, and they've been great to work with, I'll tell you that. Their understanding of it, and if procurement of the steel, which is our number one concern, takes longer than 2023, both RCO and LCP have already said that's fine. Their understanding of it. LCP is a little different. There's no requirement for them to extend the funding,
Mhm.
but RCO this has been an ongoing thing with them in the last couple of years. So they're very understanding of it.
Okay, and so this is the current estimate now, but it's possible when it goes out to bid that it may be more. Is that correct?
It could be, in these figures, there's a 10% cost contingency increase because of the volatility. Yeah.
And can you explain just one more time about the roof and what could possibly
Yeah, so
happen there?
the monoslope roof, I can tell you more about the design as well. The posts do angle in. When you look at it, it looks shorter than it actually is. So that's kind of what that design is. And then the monoslope roof, the short end is towards the street. So when you look across the park, it's not as obstructive in your view. The building looks smaller. It's a monoslope roof. In the original bid we got back, or the original estimate we got back, it was a membrane roof, which is like a PVC or like a plastic. 20 to 25 year life on it. We don't have big, huge trees that are going to be snapping branches on it, but the 20, 25 year lifespan on it. If we do a standing seam metal roof, you're looking at 30 to 50.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Stewart? Question?
Yes, thank you. Derek, good presentation. Got a few questions, some fundamental questions. To start, I thought I read, maybe it was on one of your slides, that there's built into this project cost 32% contingency. Can you explain that?
A little bit. So quite often you'll see like 10% here and there for cost increases. Let me see if I can put this up here. So here's the 10% for the cost escalation. Give me just 1 second here, sorry.
And also, Mr. Barry, could you put your figures back on the screen for all of us?
This one?
That's helpful. Thank you.
Must have been one of the emails I got, summary of it. Yeah, it was summarized in the email. Yeah, that's right. Here. So at the very bottom of their estimate, it's broken down with a whole bunch of stuff. Add up for 32%. It just says it's the 32%. So construction management is the 10 to 15% that we were told is not part of this.
Okay, so that came from our consulting engineer, the design engineer did it?
Yep.
And I've noticed that over the few years I've been on the council, that a lot of bids do have in quotes contingency, and that's something in my career I never saw on a bid. Rather, we would ask for the base bid, and then if we had alternatives or different bid schedules, and then when costs went up for whatever reason, we had a policy that required that certain amount over base bid amount had to go back to council. It seems to me that if you're trying to fund 1/3 of the project based on contingency, that we're gonna shoot ourselves in the foot no matter what we do.
And I,
That's just a comment. How would you, what would you say to that?
yeah, it's all based off of engineering estimate. And like I said, the 10% I haven't seen before for cost escalation, and it has a little 6-month caveat even on there. So there's definitely some volatility here. I do want to thank you for bringing up the bid alternatives. One idea we had in house, if you want to see this move forward with the windscreen and with the solar lights, that could be a bid alternate. So we could
Sure.
bid out the package, we could bid it out with the value engineering to see if it's something you want to move forward with.
Yeah, I think that's really wise. I love the project. I don't love the price, and I know that we're not in control of prices too much, but it just seems like there's got to be a more competitive market instead of just chalking this up to, well, inflation is going to cost a lot more. If we build our bid package in a way that bidders can be competitive, we may be pleasantly surprised. So whatever you can do to break it down into different alternatives or different bid schedules, I'd really appreciate that. And I know it's a very important project, and you're really liking it, and I'm liking it too. But at what cost? That's my biggest concern. Thank you.
Okay, so, I have a question too. Pardon?
Go ahead and ask your, yeah.
Okay, so, Mr. Barry, on this chart here, you have the full project. That means that's what you are hoping to take out of that fund?
Yes,
And then
to fulfill the.
and the value engineered, what's the difference in there?
That's without the windscreens up top.
Oh,
and
that's
without the
what you mean.
skylights. Yeah,
That you mean by okay, so I am in favor of the few cuts you made, but the more the steel roof or the metal roof. I see more and more of those, and I understand how valuable they are here. So, but are you asking on the staff recommendation, it says nothing about getting into the council strategic reserve, but it's listed here, and you're asking for $50,000 out of the council. Would that be a separate thing we would vote on, or all in one packet, or?
You want me to take that one?
sure.
So what we're trying to do tonight is just get an understanding from council of how important things like the windscreen and the skylights are, number one. And number two, do you want this project to go forward? And then what we're going to do is take your input. And if you want to go forward, we're going to put out to bid. And then we'll come back to you. And these are just some options to help get it across the finish line. I can tell you the YMCA property proceeds, that's an easy one. It's 250,000. Then we'll just pay for the playground equipment out of the reserve fund. Park impact fees. Staff wouldn't recommend going any higher with park impact fees because remember, those are a restricted use type fund. So then that really leaves your real estate excise tax and your strategic reserve or probably general fund balance as your next group of funding options. And you know, that is not something that needs to be decided tonight. That is something after we get the final bids. But before we can award a contract, we're gonna need to talk to council about where does the balance get made up.
Those amounts can change if you want to do, full project council strategic reserve, you want to do 250 there and 100 real estate excise tax. I mean, it's really up to you all.
So what you'd like to see is some sort of an idea whether we are in favor of making those value cuts, and if we're in favor of getting the metal roof for your bid packet.
Yeah, and the skylights. If we're moving forward with the project, if there's support for that, and then, yeah, do you want to see just the bid without the skylights and the windscreen? Do you want to see it with everything? With bid alternatives as well? It's really
Okay.
having you guide us, I guess, on what you would want to vote for.
Okay, so
Oh.
I guess I'll just give you my opinion. The skylights and the windscreen can go, but I would like the metal roof. So, Mr. Wilson, you had a comment?
Yeah, thank you for that input. I know this feels a little clunky to council because normally we wouldn't bring you a project at this point, right? But because we know it's over budget, we know it's going to be over budget, we felt it was important to get ahead of it, and get in front of council now to really explain you do have options at this point. So I apologize that it feels a little clunky tonight. We're just trying to get some direction, and I appreciate that. Also, just for transparency, I wanted to point out that the windscreen up here, you kind of see the artistic, you see the mountain and the players. The way it's designed right now does not have any artwork on the front of it, because staff already knew that being over budget, we weren't going to burden the project with even more overages to have that artistic. So when we talk about windscreen, it would just be like, you kind of see it in the back there, no art on it all the way around,
Just perforated panels.
just perforated panels.
But we're talking about removing that, we value engineer it
Potentially, yeah.
and remove the skylights, but still add a metal roof.
Yep.
And that's about, looks like 250,000 difference between the full project and the value engineered project.
Ms. Potato?
So what is the value of the windscreen? I mean, why is it needed, or why was it included in the design?
So it's more of aesthetic than anything, actually. It's not.
So it
structural for the
doesn't
building.
really
No, we're not on the,
affect how the wind comes through the
not,
structure.
not enough
Uh-huh.
for it to make sense. To really be chasing to have it be shut down. We don't have huge wind. As you know, the thought originally was wind and then rain. If the wind's coming in with rain, it can stop the rain and have it dripping straight down from there, but looking at it, they said it's a pretty easy one to go.
And then I have another question. I know in the future plans are the Bennett property and Siebenthaler. So we just seen how much this has increased in cost. What do you see those projects? Are they just kind of
So
on
we-
the back burner for quite a while now?
So we weren't selected for funding yet through RCO. We didn't make the cut.
Uh-huh.
More than likely, we won't see any comeback money to get to where we would see funding. So they are on the back burner. It's basically a holding pattern. We go through again, discuss with you all the priorities and look forward to the 2024 grant cycle.
Uh-huh. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mr. Reed, with your question?
Yes, thank you. I think most of them have been answered except one. Switching to the metal roof, do we know, with all the houses nearby, do we know if that's going to create a noise scenario for during the rain? Or is this a pretty standard roof that's used all over the place?
It's a pretty standard roof, but I can reach out to them. To find out.
Because I could anticipate some very unhappy neighbors if that's if that's loud during the rain.
Especially out, yeah.
All right, thank you.
I can get back to you on that.
Ms. Cole?
I like the idea of sort of including everything, but maybe in a different where we pull out the windscreen and the skylights. But I also love the artwork on the windscreen. I just think it's beautiful. And I'm wondering if there is an opportunity, say, it's all complete. And then at some point in time, we, a year or two down the line, we could add it. Would that be possible?
I think so. So there is some structure. So the supports for it is part of that. They let us know if we were to pull that out. There are some support things as well. Maybe that's an art project. Maybe it's something with the school district or partnership with them.
Leave the support so we can put it up later.
Yep,
Hmm,
yeah,
Thank you.
it is really.
Mhm.
Mr. Brown, did you have any questions?
Yes,
Go ahead.
it's really expensive. I mean, if you build a major house for 1.7 this is the place that I don't understand. Is that design what's gonna be bidded? Or can they come up with a design they've used before?
There hasn't been one built like this before. Schools typically have something about the third of that size. RCO's yet to see one this size. It's really the first in the state for a park. Scalability, if you look at play sheds, they're typically poorly lit. They don't usually invite people to be there in the evenings. And part of our goal for having this was so that during late fall, winter, early spring, 6 o'clock rolls around, kids want to play basketball, well, they have a place for it now, or they want to play pickleball, or they want to play volleyball. So that's what the lighting is there for. Rainy days during the summer, they have a place they can go play. So it's more of creating the opportunity for the public to go and recreate. So the big advantage for this is really the nighttime use for the community above the play sheds. If you go to Maple Lawn at night, you can see it kind of dimly lit. You might have a kid shooting hoops in there, but it's too dark to really play. If you look at Daffodil Valley, I think it's the same way. It's really dark and uninviting. In fact, the designs are completely opposite of this, where they're closed in. They've got the big cinder block walls, kind of creates the unwelcome feeling, where this is designed with SIPTED principles in mind. So I do agree it's expensive, but it is a very large, almost 8,000 square feet, 7,200 square feet, I believe. So the court we have out there is NBA regulation size, and it's covering the entire thing. It's like an open air gymnasium, really.
In my opinion, that should be considered as a reduction by its mode. Yeah, I don't need the rest really of this stuff. And I prefer not to use the council reserve. I mean, if this is an example of increased costs, then we might need a reserve for somehow.
Thank you.
Mr. Reed, you have another question?
Yeah, I did. It's kind of an off the wall one, but does the RCO and the other granting prevent any type of sponsorship abilities or some type of naming right for the facility that might help offset some of the costs?
They don't prevent that. It would be considered private donation, really, in the end. That is part of some of your scoring.
Okay. All right, thank you.
So, Mr. Barry, do you feel like you have enough information to move forward with how you want to put the bid out there, or?
Sort of. Kind of mixed messaging with it. Move forward, but do you want bid alternatives in there? Yes or no, basically. It feels like there's support for the project to keep moving forward. Everyone seems to be more in tune with no skylight or windscreen, but we can have it be included in the bid so that they can show us how much that truly would cost. Bids could come lower, or could come higher. We don't know how it's going to come in.
So what you're saying is this is not any kind of pre-made thing. This has been designed for this location and to work to the best of its ability to actually make it a usable situation. So that could be contributing to some of the costs then, right?
And the steel is definitely contributing to it.
Okay. Okay, I'd like to give everybody another chance for one more question before we move on. Everybody's good? Okay, all right. Thank you, Mr. Barry.
Thank you.
So Deputy Mayor and Council, after this goes out to bid, we'll come up with a final funding plan once we know the exact numbers, including the bid alternates, and then come back to council for a budget amendment. If it will be needed. So just how much?
Thank you. Good job.
So our next subject is a big one too. It's the White River Restoration Project update, and I think that will be Mr. Wright.
Yeah, myself and Andrea. And I saw it there. I got it right here. Okay. Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor and Council, for having myself and Andrea at the study session tonight. We just want to take the chance to update you all on the White River Restoration Project. I'd like to start off with giving sort of an update on the project side and turn over to Andrea to talk about probably the most important part of the project right now are all the legal agreements. And I have the slides. So as a reminder, the White River goes all the way through our Sumner Manufacturing Industrial Center. As flood risks were rising, the council recognized those risks and really helped drive the path forward to develop this project we have today. The project consists of 4 other projects. The Stewart Road Bridge, I'm sure you've heard, has recently gotten grant funding. So we believe it's fairly close to fully funded. The levee and the Point Bar project are both undergoing property acquisition. And hopefully this year you'll see more proposals to acquire property on those projects come through council. The one we really want to talk about today, though, is the Habitat project. The Habitat project is probably the largest one. It's currently near final design, permitting, and agreements. It's over 170 acres of land through the old golf course and the agricultural land on the east side of the river, so right across from the MIC. Really, we're doing a lot of work to create flood storage to help reduce flood risk to the industrial area, as well as create salmon habitat. And so here's kind of an image right now. There's the golf course. And through construction, we hope it looks something more like this. So really, you could see the new channels coming through, all the vegetation. This would be pretty far out after construction, but really the goal is, here's another image of it, is to kind of set it back and really have it be more connected to the river versus what it is right now. So that involves lots of excavation. So up to 8 feet deep in some areas is how much we'd be excavating. In addition to that, BNSF Railways is partnering with us to build some tracks. And at the north end, we'll be doing some staging for the project. And that will be future development from the sale of the golf course. So BNSF came to us wanting to build these sighting tracks. They've been looking for areas to do that. So they're going to build 10 tracks. They'll get the property from us and they will do some in-kind work. A lot of the details around that are being laid out in one of the agreements that Andrew will talk about later. Another big player that we're working with is Cascade Water Alliance. They own some of the property that we need, and we're coordinating with them on potential future sources after Cascade does their municipal source project to use the water for drinking water. So they're a big entity that we're working with. The current status of the project is, like I said earlier, we're in permitting. The Army Corps of Engineers permit is the big one we're kind of waiting for right now, and it's getting close to finalized. We expect it to be sometime 2023. I'm estimating spring. That draft is being reviewed internally at the Corps. I think we're just waiting for U.S. Fish to give their biological opinion before the Corps, that and the cultural resources, before the Corps is ready to finalize that permit. The utilities are already being relocated. You may have gone out and seen them right now. PSE Gas has completed their relocation. Comcast and Zayo are also like 90% done. They just need to pull their fiber through their line, but they've bored all the way. And our water and sewer is currently out there being constructed by Johansson. The project's at 90% design. We're working at reviewing that and taking it further. BNSF plans to bid their portion. We heard they're still looking forward for early February, April 23 kind of timeframe for them to actually bid their part of the construction. We're also preparing to do an RFQ for a construction management team to help us as we move forward. And we're working with BNSF to kind of outline the construction schedule, get that a little bit more defined. For now, we do have kind of a preliminary construction schedule year by year of what we expect. So 2023, this year, BNSF is working on selecting their contractor. They're going to start with building some foundations for their sighting track project, and they'll potentially start some of the excavation, most likely on the south end near the agricultural and like 150th. We're going to be working to finalize our plans, potentially start buying some of the long lead items like the large trees and other things. And we're going to be finishing our utility relocations. in 24, BNSF will keep working on their foundations and likely finish them. They'll start building a bridge for their tracks. And they'll really do the most of their large excavation, that 8 feet of excavation, moving million cubic yards of dirt. A lot of that will happen in 24. We will be working on selecting our contractor if we haven't done that by the end of 23. And we're going to start working on what we can. BNSF is going to be pretty busy on site. So most of our work would most likely be installing wood structures in places where they're not working and trying to follow behind them where we can. 2025, BNSF should be finishing their bridge, finishing the grading, and completing all the rest of their work before they're ready to totally hand everything over to us, which is when we'll come in, we'll install more of our wood structures, and we'll start releasing the river into that new side channel I showed you in that first after photo. And we're going to start planting. 26 and 27 is kind of everything should more or less on the ground be in place. BNSF should more or less be done on our project. And we'll work on finishing the last of our wood, moving the tail race, paving the new trail, which will run along the railroad tracks, complete all of our planting, and move the number 9 ditch, and hopefully be done with construction around 2027. So it's kind of a high level schedule. We're still working on the details for this. This is preliminary. So don't hold me to it if 2024 it doesn't look exactly like that, but that's our hope. So I think with that, turn it over to Andrea to talk about the agreements.
Sure, thanks, Robbie. So how do we keep moving this project forward? There are a number of large hurdles between now and construction beginning that we need to finalize and work through. So there are a variety of major agreements that I'll walk through in just a moment. 31 documents and agreements that need to be negotiated and finalized between now and when we hope to close late spring, early summer. We need to receive our core permit, which, as Robbie explained, is closer than ever. We need to surplus some property south of 24th Street, which is currently the property that you might know as the farm, Mosby Farm property. We need to vacate a portion of 24th Street because it will become part of the BNSF sidetracks. We need to close, which will require city council approval of all the agreements. It will require BNSF board approval of all the agreements, and it will require Cascade Water Alliance board approval of all of the agreements. Begin construction, utilize the former golf course property for as long as we need to satisfy core permit conditions and support the project. And then we will be able to finally sell the golf course. And something that's not in these slides, but I want council to be aware of, we have been regularly meeting with the purchaser of the golf course. We're invested in keeping them on board. They are kept up to speed. And so they know the status at all times. So the first agreement is a purchase and sale agreement between the railroad and the city. And the purchase and sale agreement relates to the lime green portion of the property shown on this picture. It's a 200-foot strip of land that the railroad needs from the city and a portion, small, tiny portion of it from Cascade Water Alliance to build their sidetracks. In exchange for the property that they are receiving from the city, they will be excavating out a large portion of this project. So on this image where it says 8 feet deep excavation, BNSF will do that dirt work and stack it up in order to preload and then develop their sidetracks. So they are getting dirt that they would otherwise have to bring in from off-site, and we are getting the dirt removed that we would otherwise have to remove off-site. So it really is a harmonious relationship. The dirt work will take several construction seasons. So that was the reason that Robbie explained the construction sequencing effort that we've been going through. There will be no cash exchanged for the work that we are receiving and the property that BNSF is receiving. Upon receipt of the core permit, and once all the agreements are finalized, we can close on the sale of that property. The second major agreement is called a site work agreement. This agreement is also between the railroad and the city. This agreement really is about the on-site construction activities. It outlines who's doing what. It outlines when each party gets to do what they need to do. There's a handoff protocol. There's an inspection and finalization protocol. It really is the bones of the deal. And so the effort that the city and the railroad are undertaking right now is to finalize the construction sequence and the order that all of this work needs to occur in order to achieve what we need it to achieve. So I talked about the excavation work. The NSF will be doing what we call rough grading of all of those side channels that you saw in the pictures earlier. The city will then come in and do the fine grading and the planting of all the vegetation and all of the final pieces of those side channels. But most of the rough grading is BNSF. Let's see. Hangups. You'll see that on most of these slides, we identified things that are hanging us up. The exhibit to this agreement is really where the heart of the deal lives. And it has so far taken years to figure out because of how long it takes to design projects of this scope. It's taken a long time to establish that exhibit. So that's really the final piece of the puzzle on the site work agreement that our engineering teams are working through right now. The third agreement, major agreement, is what we have coined the three-party agreement. The three-party agreement is between the city, the railroad, and Cascade Water Alliance. And it is really a purchase and sale agreement on steroids. It has everything to do with property conveyances, due diligence prior to conveying the property, indemnifications for former and future property owners, etc. So on this slide, you'll see a picture. The portion shown in red is the portion that the railroad will own in the future. And they will get 7 and 6 from the city, and they will get 3 and 5 back from Cascade Water Alliance. The portion of this picture shown in yellow hatching is currently owned by Cascade Water Alliance and will in the future be owned by the city of Sumner. Everything else on the picture is already owned. Everything else on the picture west of the red is already owned by the city. So the purpose is the property conveyances. It outlines environmental testing that the parties are undertaking. It outlines ongoing maintenance obligations, indemnifications, standard provisions that you would typically expect in a purchase and sale agreement. And this agreement goes away after we close and all the properties are conveyed to their new owners, with the very limited exception of some warranties and representations.
So, Ms. Marquez, can I ask a question?
Of course.
That's property, but is there pipes or something underneath there that they own that they want?
Cascade,
Yeah.
there are no pipes under that property to my knowledge. It is an open body of water that's called the tail race.
Well, that's the tail
That's
race
the
that we're
tail
seeing
race.
right there.
Yes.
Okay, I thought it had to be more than property.
Yeah, it's not
or
just
land.
vacant land. You're absolutely right. And I think I have a better image in the future. Yes, so this image shows you what the tail race looks like today. And so it is a straight shot, open water channel between the former PSE powerhouse that is east of East Valley Highway, and it goes all the way to the White River. So as part of this project, the tail race that currently goes east-west will be rerouted by the city to the south, and it will meet up with the White River about 2 miles. Is that accurate? 2 miles south of where it currently meets the river. Any other questions on this slide? Some of the hangups that we're experiencing related to the three-party agreement are that the releases and indemnification provisions that are being requested by Cascade and to some extent by the railroad are, in the city's opinion, unreasonably shifting responsibility and liability. So it's a process we have to work through. It's a tough negotiation. These are difficult, large parties that we're talking to and working with. But we are devoted to getting this done, and we're working hard to get this agreement to a place where we're comfortable recommending it to you.
Yeah, I already have one more other question.
Sure.
And that is with BNSF Railroad. Are they gung ho to do this project and they will get on it right away and that sort of thing? Like, meaning they're not going to just get in this agreement and then hold us up again because it gets on their back burner? Do you have those kind of agreements?
We don't have anything that says that thou shall begin immediately. There is no indication at this point that they're going to delay. In fact, something that surprised us recently is how quickly they're going to go out and get their contractor on board next month, which was a surprise to us. That's way out in front of the closing of all of these documents and indicates to us that they're ready and willing to go, that they're funded and they're devoted to the project.
Okay,
So
that's good to hear. Thank you.
the fourth agreement is,
I think Mr. Brown has a question
Oh,
for you
sure.
too.
Is a railroad paying for the property?
no, for the 200-foot strip from the city. No, the consideration that the city's receiving for that property is all of the dirt work that they're going to be completing for our project. So they're going to be digging out all of the soil to build our side channels and using that dirt for their project. And in exchange, they're getting the 200-foot strip of property from the city. The value of their work exceeds the value of our property.
All right, that's what I thought.
That's a great question. Because I didn't emphasize that we have done price analyses on this and we've utilized value experts to determine that the city is coming out whole, if not ahead, based on the value of the work we're receiving for the land.
I just want to check. I can't see Mr. Reed or Mr. Stewart. Do either one of them have questions at this point? Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, the fourth agreement, and this is a temporary agreement, is that after the city acquires what we've coined the T parcels, so the yellow T here, after the city comes into possession of the T parcels, for at least 2 and maybe 3 years, the tail race is still going to flow through them. So what the city proposes and what Cascade is requiring is a temporary easement for that current tail race. Because it's the status quo, the city's not eager to take on additional responsibility and liability for Cascade's tail race. But the all indications point to Cascade requiring the city to take on maintenance and monitoring responsibility for their tail race after we acquire the property that it will flow over. There's also some indication that they will be requesting the city take on all the liability for the water quality and tort liability related to the tail race. So this is to give you an idea of some of the hang up we're experiencing during these negotiation sessions. But again, we'll work through it and I have no doubt that we'll get to the finish line on this.
But couldn't it be that we're almost considering that they're leasing that?
You make a very good point.
I mean, I don't know where I want to go with that,
Yeah.
but I mean, in my,
I don't disagree with you. I
Okay.
don't disagree that the city will be the landowner, but Cascade's asset will flow over top of it.
okay.
That's the idea. That is really the purpose of easements, though, is to grant somebody else a use of property that is something short of full ownership, something short of fee simple,
Mhm.
but they will have rights related to their tail race under that easement and will own the property. So we're trying to find a middle ground where we aren't taking on essentially ownership responsibility, but that it is fair. Okay, agreement number 5, and this is the one that has taken the most time because it's the most permanent agreement of all of these. It will last into perpetuity, we hope, with a couple minor exceptions that I'll highlight in just a moment. So this is a permanent easement from the city to, I have a typo here, I'm sorry, Cascade Water Alliance, for what we are calling the outflow channel. So currently the body of water that runs east-south is called the Tail Race. When the city finishes its project and diverts that water to the south, which is the white chunk here on the image, the bottom right-hand corner, we're going to name it the outflow channel. It's no longer the Tail Race, it's now the outflow channel. So we will be granting to Cascade Water Alliance a permanent easement for their water. We hope that it will last for decades, if not forever. The reason I say hope is because when Cascade Water Alliance exists to provide municipal water to their customers are up in the east side area, Bellevue, Kirkland, etc. And they haven't yet built the water, transmission line, but what's the outfit that actually cleans it? Treatment plant. Thank you. I don't know why I couldn't think of that word. They haven't yet built the treatment plant infrastructure, and they haven't yet built the water transmission line that will get the drinking water to their customers. But that project is anticipated in the future. And when they build that project, water will no longer flow out the Tail Race. So we have a provision in our agreement that requires Cascade to continue to coordinate with the city to identify sources of water to continue to wet that side channel. And we have other stakeholders at the table that have been actively working on this with us, the tribes, and we hope to involve potentially other adjacent property owners. So that is a risk of this project, is that that body of water, the Tail Race, will no longer flow through this project at some point in the future, which we expect to be somewhere between 20 and 60 years into the future. Let's see, other provisions of this agreement that are noteworthy. The city will take on all maintenance and monitoring responsibilities for the outflow channel. That means that if a tree falls in it, it's our responsibility to go clear it out. If there are water quality issues that are caused by a third-party spill, for example, or if a car flies into the outflow channel off East Valley Highway, which would be extremely unlikely because of the distance between the train tracks and the street, but those types of things would be our responsibility. We have also been asked by Cascade to take on release them from any claims related to this outflow channel. Claims that the city could face from a third party. So there are risks involved in asking Cascade to allow us to divert their body of water, because through this agreement, there has been quite a bit of shifting of responsibility and liability. There is a fish study requirement as part of Cascade's water right that they were granted from the Department of Ecology. And through our project, if that fish study is requested by Ecology, Cascade is asking the city to pay for half of it and install it as a city project. So there are matters involved in this permanent easement that will increase potentially cost and risk to the city. But this is one of the most important pieces of this project, this outflow channel. So it is important that we come up with a reasonable way to settle these issues. Are there any questions on the outflow channel easement before I move on? Okay.
Oh, Ms. Potato?
My question is, when do when will Mr. Salmon be happily in his channel? How many years do you think that will be before, you get the outcome that you're wanting?
Yeah, I mean, salmon will be benefiting from it as soon as we cut that first part. So I think the north channel will most likely be connected to the river first. We're gonna put a bunch of big wood right up at the north end of the project. And let's see, I'll just go to that photo. Up near the top of that white line, we're gonna put a big piece of wood right in the middle of the river, and it's gonna split the river around. And that should happen before all of the tail race and other parts are done. So I mean, that could be as soon as 25, more likely 26, 27.
So it's getting to be more reality that the whole the main purpose isn't it for the fish habitat?
It's one of them. Yeah, flooding's another big benefit to this, but yeah, it's also critically important to fish, which is the reason that we got that 14 million PSAR grant, was for the fish benefit more than the flood benefit.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Brown?
Yeah, they are not allowed to dredge the river, right?
It would be very difficult.
No, it's not in the Indian Ellis, right?
Right.
Over many years, the habitat area may fill up with dirt. Are we allowed to dredge that?
I do believe we're working on, we haven't seen the final core conditions yet. But I do believe we were trying to get some maintenance in there. So we've done adaptive management kind of things. And part of that looks at in the future, if some of that does happen, what would our response be? I know that's actively being worked on. Because it is something we've considered. Projects, necessarily don't last forever, but we want to last as long as we can. So I think we've at least been able to look out that we will get at least a 50-year lifetime, most likely longer than that. There's so much uncertainty on the river. It's hard for an engineer to guarantee us too far into the future, but they're able to give us some time frame. And like I said, we've worked at that adaptive management of if it does happen, what can we do? I think we tried to include some of that in the permit.
Yeah, that would be good because many years from now, the project may become a waste if it can't dredge.
Okay, can I ask just a little question of Robbie there on this? I'm having a little bit of trouble sorting out the outflow. You would think Cascade wants it for drinking water, but it's also going to be fish water first. I mean,
Yeah.
it's going to be it's going to be natural.
Mhm.
And then the natural water will flow into some treatment plant that they make down the road.
Cascades treatment plant would actually be before it flows at all. So right at East Valley Highway, if you drive up, there's the big powerhouse building. They would build their treatment infrastructure up there before it comes to our project at all. So they would get the water immediately as it comes out of lake taps.
So
And then they
it
would send
will never be fish water right there. The outflow will not be considered.
That's what we're working on. So there's potential for water, and like Andrea said, it's uncertain when they're going to start. And in those agreements, we're trying to look at ways that we can get alternative water for that. And there may be times when Cascade does drain the lake for purposes every year. So there will be times when there is flow. It might not be as constant as today, which is year round, a pretty good flow.
And if I think I might understand your question just a little bit differently. Cascade does not currently provide drinking water. None of the water that flows through the tail race or the future outflow channel will be drinkable water. It'll
Okay,
just
the
come from
future
the-
outflow will not. So they're getting the water before it comes to the outflow.
Right. And when they start providing municipal water, at the time they convert their whole operation to drinking water, water will no longer flow through the outflow channel at all.
Okay, that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
So then it will change. And then as part of our project, we will need to find other water to flow through that?
Exactly.
And is that possible?
Not currently. I want to be transparent with council. We have analyzed a variety of options from our well sources to capturing storm water from the hillside to purchasing water from Cascade Water Alliance that will continue to flow through there.
But does it need to have a constant flow?
In order for the fish to have good habitat, yes.
Okay, okay. Okay, I guess Mr. Stewart?
Yes, thank you. Andrea, very good presentation, and I really appreciate all the work that you've done on this so far. I just got a couple of comments. First is a little just an offhand comment that this proves the wheels of government turn very, very slowly. The Cascade Water Alliance was actually formed when I was still working for the city of Bellevue back in the early 2000s. And finally, they will find a source of water for the East Side residents. They have been battling the city of Seattle for water forever. So it's really cool to see how this is all coming together. The one question I have is, and I guess I was asleep during the last decade. I thought we sold part of the golf course to a developer. Is that still going on? That's one question.
Yes, the northern 70 acres of the former golf course are under contract to be sold to Principal. And
Okay.
thank you, Robbie. That's the portion shown on the north part of that photo in purple.
Okay.
And that the idea is that that will still be sold to the developer, but not until after it is utilized for portions of this project as staging and all of those golf course ponds are filled.
Okay. Wow. So the city of Sumner will not realize any sale benefits of that until all that project is finished then? Is that what you're saying?
Not until the project is finished, but until that portion of the property is done being used for staging areas. So we expect at least one, maybe two construction seasons for use of that property, and then we can sell it.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. And then the last thing, along with that sale of the golf course, I seem to remember, and Ryan Windish, I think, had some explanation of this too at some point. Was not a great portion of the south part of our property, the old golf course, designated ag land for perpetual ag land? Has that gone away?
I believe it's designated resource protection.
Okay, that sounds better.
Just a moment, Ryan's gonna answer that question.
This is Ryan Windish, the Community and Economic Development Director. Councilmember Stewart, you're correct. It was at one time zoned agriculture. And then a few years back, we rezoned it to resource protection, which allows for restoration projects like this one.
Okay, so does that, I seem to remember in that discussion years ago, how certain percentage of our land has to be ag land. So is that all changed then?
Yes. We never were required to have a certain percentage of it as ag land. That's a requirement for the county has to be more careful about agricultural lands that are of statewide significance.
Okay, I just sought clarification of that just so I can make it all come up in my mind. This is wonderful. All of this stuff, including projects that are ongoing. I'm just sad that I'm probably not going to be alive to be able to see all of this come to completion. So Go for it. I really like the work that we're doing. Thank you so much, staff. Good job. Thank you.
So I just want to give a lot of praise to our staff. They have been meeting multiple times each week with all of these parties, and not just for the last couple months. We're talking over a year now. And it's been a lot of work, and they're making steady progress. And it's Andrea, it's Robbie, it's Mike, it's Doug, all of our consultants. Just a phenomenal job. One of those things that you will probably only do once in your career, and a lot of people won't even do something like this in their career. So just kudos to all of them. They've done an amazing job.
So does that complete the White River Restoration Project discussion then? Mhm. So, does anybody, you're not going to give an administrator's report, are you?
I just have two announcements real quick,
Okay.
if you'll let me, Deputy Mayor. First is next week is a fifth Monday, so there's no meeting. Enjoy your night off. And then the next thing is we are, as you know, through the budget process, we're in the process of transitioning from our short telephone system to Teams. And as we do that transition, it's going to change the way that council receives their voicemails for their city lines. Once we make this transition, when you get a voicemail, it will show up in your email as an audio file as well as text. So then you can return calls at your leisure from either coming here into the council office, use a city phone, or reaching out to your constituent via your personal phone or other method. So look for that. IT will be contacting you as we get that set up and helping you set up your new voicemail system. That's all I have.
Thank you. Is there any council meeting calendar issues? I have a bunch of nodding heads, so I guess that's not an issue tonight. So then are we going to adjourn?
Yeah, on the committee side, I did want to let the ARPA committee know that we will be having a meeting on February 8th for the ARPA committee.
What day of week is that?
That's a Wednesday.
What time? 4
That is
o'clock,
at 5:30.
5:30? Okay. So do we adjourn to go into executive session?
Adjourn into executive session.
Oh, I'm gonna adjourn at 7:23 to go into executive session pursuant to RCW 42.30.110 in parentheses 1, in parentheses I, in parentheses 3 I's, to discuss with legal counsel litigation or legal risks of a proposed action.
The proposed duration is 30 minutes and there is no action to follow.
Right,
And we'll
thank
be
you.
staying in this room.
I have a quick question. Is there a separate link to that, or are we going directly in from here?
We're going to stay in this room and go directly in from here.
Okay, thank you.